Well, with the event date for the Halloween NA event being officially announced, I think it's actually going to be up by the time this video goes live on the channel. I thought I would go ahead and give you guys one of my event guides so that way you know everything you need to know going into this event. You're not going to get caught with your pants down. And I honestly forgot how good this event was playing it back over on JP 2 years ago. It gives us a whole litany of just decent free-to-play CEs. The free-to-play themselves are pretty good. The whole event gimmick is also very nice in letting you pick and choose what different rewards you want to get just passively over time. I mean, we even get some pretty decent servant buffs. It's just a solid event overall, and I'm really looking forward to getting my grind on in this event, especially because, you know, you're just assuming that I'm not going to actually get Huyan, even though I've been waiting for like the better part of 2 years to try to summon for her. You know, those extra little bit of quartz and tickets that you get from events, I'm assuming I'm going to need to get those. So, you know, drop the event, let me get in there. And hopefully I just don't get blasted too hard when going into the summoning banner. So with that being said, if you guys enjoy being informed on all things on the NA and JP side of things, make sure you leave a like on the video and even subscribe to the channel, as it does help me out more than you know, and it's absolutely free. But with that out of the way, let's start getting into this, starting off with the prerequisites that you need to meet in order to get into this event. You've noticed that we've had a lot of Lost Belt 5 stuff going on over here on the NA side of things with the Road to Lost Belt 7 campaign, and that is because you need to have finished the Lost Belt 5 to get into this Halloween event. So if you've been middling around in Lost Belt 3 or 4, maybe you're still in part 1, make sure you get caught up so you can actually start partaking in this event. But also don't forget that most of these events are usually time gated in some way. So if you're taking like those first couple of days to kind of get caught up on story, you're really not missing out on too much until we start getting the better nodes that are open, and that's when the real grinding can begin. Now, one of the main gimmicks that you're going to have to take advantage of during this event is the different type of roles you'll be playing with the free-to-play CEs, whether that be military affairs, government affairs, or internal affairs. Basically, these are all color-coded in the Mount Liang area, where that's going to be where you're getting those passive materials over time. I don't know if you try to go look it up or have somebody explain it to you, it just seems like a lot, but realistically, you want to put up servants that are highly leveled. So the higher your level on your servant, the more you're going to get back on those rewards. And then as you're using these free-to-play CEs, they're going to buff, you know, what jobs are being done. So if you need a mat that's open for you on, say, government affairs, that's the blue one, you just want to kind of shift to using those CEs and kind of just focus on clearing quests while you have that up. You could just think of them as different point ladders in a way, if that helps you kind of think about it. And you can kind of shift on focusing on, well, whatever you want to focus on depending on what materials you actually need. But again, just focus on putting up your leveled servants. If you don't have a whole bunch of leveled servants, just do the best that you can. You know, if you are newer, just throw up your guys. At least getting some progress on them is better than getting none. But yeah, make sure you're trying to level up your servants with like EXP cards and stuff that you're getting from the event shop and all that good stuff. Now, I did mention that we are going to be getting some servant buffs over here, and I think it's really funny that they gave one to Qin Liangyu, because she is one of those servants that, even though I have read Lost Belt 3 now, I always forget that she exists, right? Even though, like, I liked her in the story, I just don't know what it is, but I keep forgetting that she exists. And so they gave her a pretty nice buff, you know. She has that double guts that now lasts for 5 turns. They gave her a battery to help her get into her NP, which, if you don't know what her NP is, to summarize, it's kind of like a baby version of what Super Orion does. I kind of consider her the prototype version of that, where it's like, oh, it's a lot of self buffs and stuff along those lines. So like really help you do a lot of face card damage, except they kind of went balls to the wall with Super Orion and were a little tame with Qin Liangyu over here. But then she's also able to fund stars for herself every turn for 5 turns, which is really, really good, but I think people are still going to forget that she exists, which I think is really, really unfortunate. Maybe I'll go into one of like the more difficult quests and I'll test out Qin Liangyu in there to maybe show off that she can be a little decent, because realistically, this is a very nice buff for someone that wants to kind of just spam their NP all over the place and do face card damage, but I don't think it's enough for people to be like, oh my goodness, time to break out my Qin Liangyu. It's probably just going to be 2 Sank cores for a lot of people doing her rank up quest. Yanqing, I think, gets off a little bit better with his buff, because they just straight up gave him 2 power mods against lawful and evil enemies. That's just really good. So not only can the guy just do really insane crits, but now if you just are a law-abiding citizen or an evil mastermind, you're gonna get fisted even harder by this guy, which I like. Yanqing, loved him in the summer event, liked him in Shinjuku, liked him in summer too, so I'm excited to kind of just break this guy out a little bit more and just absolutely beat the tar out of people. And so if you like beating the tar out of people, your Yanqing is going to be that much stronger. I think his will definitely be more impactful for people to use, especially because Yanqing just telling him, all right, go beat that dude up, especially with the quick update, how quick chains now can not only drop more stars, but they also give the bonus to the entire, you know, brave chain. I think he's going to benefit a bit more from a buff like this, and it's just easier to use than someone like Qin Liangyu. Although speaking of those two servants, we got to get down into the weeds of what the event bonus servants are going to be. The event bonus servants are always really important because these are the guys that are going to make your life easier if you're more on the free-to-play side, because these guys get special damage bonuses. Obviously, if you go summon for Huyan, she's going to be really good going into this event, getting 100% bonus damage, but also do not forget about the Pretender Liz that we're getting as well. As someone that does not have Koyanskaya, Oberon, or even Ruler Scotty over on JP, I had to use the Pretender Liz for the 90++, and depending on your face card RNG, you can actually make it work. Keep in mind, mine was only like 676 or something along those lines, which is why I was having more RNG rolls. And obviously not having the main supports to actually support her made things a little bit more rough. But if you level her up, much like the EO event for Guda Guda that we just had, you can use this servant for the 90++. It might require a little bit of RNG depending on your setup, but they can definitely help you out getting through that. But then you have all the other servants that you might be using for story fights or going into the challenge quest. And you've got some pretty solid ones in here. Zenobia herself is actually not too bad, as the main final 90++ node is consisting of mostly Saber enemies. It does have a Lancer in there, but if you've got a really strong Zenobia, you wailed out for her, she might actually put in a little bit of work for you over there. Jax herself, if you're going to be relying on, say, quick farming, is a very solid quick looper. Getting a 50% bonus damage mod, I think, is very strong for her. And then a lot of the guys in the 30% range are also fairly solid. I wish Sei was a little bit better of a looper so I could recommend her, but also you got Tai Gong in there, and Tai Gong is just really, really solid overall. Not only giving very solid buffs to the entire party, but just being a really strong servant overall. If you have him, make some good use of him, especially because, I mean, likelihood is that you might have him over some of these other guys because he is on every single banner. I was actually looking into maybe talking about Murasaki for this event, but she doesn't actually have the buff yet because she actually could have been really useful going into the 90++, but unfortunately, we don't have her Valentine's buff yet, so unfortunately, I don't know if I could really recommend her for these stages. As far as single targets are concerned, if you want to bring somebody for boss fights or for challenge quests, things along those lines, you want more of a heavy hitter, we don't actually have the craziest single targets available to us. I mean, there's some guys in here that are fine, but nobody that's really like knocking your socks off being like, oh yeah, that's a crazy DPS right there. I mean, some of these guys are okay, which again might matter for the challenge quest if you're trying to do some really big damage, but it also might come into play if you don't have some of the recommended servants that we're going to go over for the 90++ node, and you have to rely on some of the event damage bonus guys. But let's start talking about a lot of the free-to-play stuff that we're going to be getting, because there is quite a bit. Not only is there a free-to-play servant, but there are 3 free-to-play command codes, and there are 3 free-to-play CEs. So let's just go ahead and start off with the command code. Starting off with the 5-star command code, Knight of the Abyssal Sanctuary, which inflicts 500 curse damage to an enemy for 3 turns when you use the card, and it also drops 3 stars when you use the card. Obviously, it has a picture of Jacques de Molay on it, because, I mean, Jacques de Molay has a curse power mod. So just slap this on her and let her go to work. Or if you actually pulled the summer version of Eris, remember that Eris does have a power mod against cursed enemies, and so maybe if your second skill is down, you can have this command code on one of your command cards and click that command card before using the NP to turn on her curse power mod that she applies on NP itself. It could be really good for something like that as well. So don't just think that it's going to be for someone like Jacques de Molay. You can also use it on, say, like Summer Eris. Then we have the 4-star command code, the Azure Dragon's 9-section staff, which is going to give you some little star weight on the selected card, and then it also removes one of the enemy's critical attack chance up buffs whenever you use the selected card, meaning this is going to be better on more of your CQ oriented servants, not only getting a little bit of extra star weight on, say, an art servant, putting it on their arts card, a buster servant, putting it on their buster card, quick on the quick card, whatever you want to be doing crits on predominantly, but then it also has the added effect of taking a little bit of pressure off of your, main guys by removing some of the crit chance buffs that you have on the enemy servants, right? It's just very good for that in general. It could also be pretty good for solo servants if you have a servant that you know is going to be going into fights where the enemies are going to pretty consistently put up those crit chance buffs. You can kind of just, in a solo setting, have that every single turn being guaranteed because you only have the 5 cards of your, servant that you're using. It could also be good for something along those lines. Finally, we have the 3-star command code called Shifuso-kun. I'm going to go with that and hope that I did not absolutely butcher the name, but it's Tai Gong's little tapier buddy, that whenever you attack with this, it increases your buff removal resistance by 10% for 1 turn, and it also gives you 100 HP back whenever you use the engraved card, which is actually not all that bad. Again, you could use this on, say, one of your solo servants, something along those lines, but you could also apply this to someone that you want to be using in like a Castoria team. Like, say you're doing the Castoria, Lady Avalon, and then insert art servant of your choosing. The one thing that those teams are really weak to is getting all of your buffs yeeted off of you. It can really mess up your flow and your rhythm with how your cooldowns are working, and then just the fact that you're going to be completely exposed. Putting this on one of those servants can actually be pretty decent. but I wouldn't really stress out too much about what you're going to put it on, because again, this is just one of those nice little ones that you could throw on there to give yourself a little bit of extra utility. Maybe you dodge a buff being removed from yourself, and again, you can always apply it whenever you know you're going to be going into a fight or a boss is going to remove buffs off of you, so you can always save it for something like that. Now we have the free-to-play CEs, and starting off with the Sanzo one, Dancing on Lotus Blossoms, which I actually think is a fairly decent one, especially if you are a newer player. This is going to be one of your bread and butters, as it does give you innate pierce defense, meaning as long as this CE is equipped to a servant, which they can't be, knocked off in the middle of battle or anything. Imagine a boss being able to do that. I think that'd be crazy. But it is very useful to have things like this in your arsenal. I mean, and the other effects are not too bad. Getting 10% buster and 20% crit damage, that's just good. That's free damage and bigger crits that you're going to be able to do, while also getting around a really annoying mechanic, as even some skills or NPs, won't give you permanent pierce defense, but this will just be something that your servant gains with the entire fight, and it can just make your life that much easier. In fact, I was catching up on some advanced quests over on the JP side of things. I was doing the Dino Mommy one, and I was trying to engage with the mechanic, and somebody in my chat was like, bro, just use the pierce defense CE, just get around it. And then, yeah, we just kind of destroyed the advanced question, just kind of made our life a lot easier. Instead of trying to engage with it, screw that, I'm just going to start blowing people up with big crits and big damage. So make sure you focus on this one. If you're like, oh, do I have to fully level this up? You could do that, as it is an attack CE, and attack CEs are a bit more high value if you want to go ahead and fully level them up. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. I wouldn't say it's one of the ones you got to prioritize, like a Kaleidoscope or a Black Grail, something along those lines, or cranking some of these really good iconic CEs that you want to be using. This one you don't have to fully level, but if you wanted to, it wouldn't be the worst idea. Then we have the arts version for our CE, Tiger Hunting Aesthetics. It's the one that has Lan Ling and the boy Chen Dinglenuts on it. Unfortunately, this one is a split CE, so you really don't want to be leveling this one up. You want to focus on leveling up the CEs that prioritize one stat over the other. But again, for most free-to-play players and newer players, this will be a really good pickup, as it is a star bomb CE, meaning as soon as you start off the fight, you get 20 stars for free, as well as just getting, again, 15% crit damage and a 15% arts buff. Technically, that contributes to your NP gain as well. This is not a bad CE to have. And which is why I mean, the event overall is not that terrible, especially if you're coming into it, because you're getting a pierce defense CE, you're getting a star bomb CE, and then if we just want to look at the last one, Flowing Pool of Wine, you're getting a looping CE as well, as this one gives you 20% NP generation, 10% NP damage, and you start off with a 50% battery, which sometimes that 50% battery does mean a bit more for some boxes that just don't have the best looper, or they're using someone that doesn't have their own battery, or their own battery is really small. It's just a very convenient, nice thing to have, and will be really good going into this event as well. But it's hard for me to say it's a bad event when they give you 3 really solid free-to-play CEs for just playing the event. Again, looping CE, star bomb CE, pierce defense. Not the craziest if you're someone like me who already has a very well-established account, but for newer players or people that might have missed out on some of these other events, getting these are quite nice. And then also just getting different varieties of the pierce defense CE, or getting one that gives you like an arts buff plus the star bomb. It lets you diversify out what kind of CEs and effects you have, and I'm a huge fan of that. But now we move on to the big cheese over here, if you will, the 90++. Now, obviously, I always tell players, if you can't do the 90++, or it's taking you like 9 turns to get done, yes, it does have the best drop rates, but it is perfectly fine to go back down to the 90+ if you can do that one a little bit more consistently. But I really don't think this 90++ is all that bad. It is a little bit annoying, as the starting enemy, the Cerberus, is at around 300k HP, but there is a nice thing where the Wave 1 Cerberus and the servants from Trom that are going to be featured on Wave 2 are all Earth attribute enemies. So if you want to split this into a multi-core, and say you have someone like Summer Ibuki or Koyan Dark that have these anti-Earth traits, you could use them to try to mop up waves 1 and 2, and then you could focus on prioritizing like a single target or a really strong, highly invested AoE for taking out the Dioscuri twins that are only at about 700,000 HP, which sounds like a lot, but it's a lot easier than taking out, say, like the 1.1 million HP enemies. That's 400,000 less damage you gotta do. I do have some suggestions for taking out this very massive Dioscuri twin over here. If you want to go ahead and capitalize on the Sky power mod, you could use somebody like Tesla or Raiko. Raiko in particular, you could also use her to clear the second wave. I know she doesn't have her battery, but if we're getting into the weeds of using multi-core setups and using 2 different DPSs to try to get around this, Raiko herself being able to star bomb a lot on wave 2, because she does give herself the star gen up on wave 2, can almost guarantee that going into the third wave you have crits. Now, I'm not really sure what setup you would be doing where you're also going to be able to loop her NP back, but if you're thinking about somebody that could give you that damage, that has power mod and could crit really hard on the Dioscuri twins, she's not a bad option. Obviously, I think Tesla's a little bit easier to use because he just has the 50% batter and has been upgraded like 75 times, but I didn't want to discount the ability of those that want to do, like, say, crit setups or are going to be more reliant on using their face cards. I think Gilgamesh is also a really solid option just going into this one in general. He might struggle a little bit with the Cerberus on the first wave if you have him at NP1, but if you want to help him out with that, you could always use, again, the Landling CEs that give you 20 stars that go in immediately. Him being an archer with a star weight skill does mean that wave 1 might be a little bit more on the RNG side, but again, you could probably take this guy out with an NP plus some backed up crits, especially if they're buster crits and you're using double Koi and Skya. And then the Dioscuri twins are weak to Enema Elish, so you could obviously use him to take that out, and that should not be a problem whatsoever. Again, especially if you're like bombing stars and dropping those all over the place. Primhild I think is another really interesting option if you want to go ahead and use her, as the Dioscuri twins are chaotic balanced, I believe, and so you could bring her out to actually take advantage of that chaotic power mod that she has. Although again, like some of the other servants, you're going to want her to be pretty decently invested, as I don't really see an NP1 or 2 Primhild taking out this Dioscuri. Although then again, if you have Oberon, maybe they can. Especially if you're using the, the third free-to-play CE that gives you the extra NP damage. Haven't tested that one out myself, but I could see it maybe being possible. But again, like a lot of these 90++s, I'm going to assume you're going to be needing like around an NP3 or higher to consistently get good clears on these. If you're one of the people that actually invested into Archetype Earth during the anniversary, she's not too bad for this one, as she actually gets to use her chaotic power mod against the Dioscuri twins. She can actually cook on this stage. Again, like a lot of the other ones, I don't think you're going to be getting it done at NP1. But most people that summoned for Archetype Earth either went for 1 copy or 5 copies. There was really no in-betweens that I was really seeing. You were either all in or you were just collecting your, Archetype Earth. So if you're one of those people, you're eating on this one. You can actually use her to take these guys out. And then again, kind of similar to Raiko, this servant doesn't have a battery, but if you wanted to use them, they're a bit older. I think you might be able to get away with something. This is just me kind of spitballing at the end here, but the free-to-play Nobu, I know doesn't have the greatest damage, but the Dioscuri twins are both divine and are riding enemies, meaning that you activate both of Nobu's power mods on them, which does make me speculate a little bit that you might be able to put in some work with them. Again, this is more just speculation on my part, something that I noticed as I was looking at their traits. I was like, oh wait, they have divinity and they're a riding enemy. I was like, huh, that screams Nobu. Now again, her damage isn't the craziest, but double power mods is double power mods, so if you're crazy enough, I think you could try to make the attempt on it. Again, this would require you to start getting into the multi-core setups and all that stuff, and you would probably have to save her NP specifically for the final node, and you would need somebody to take care of wave 1 and 2 themselves. But I don't know, maybe you could have something like a Summary Buki takes wave 1 and 2, and then your Nobu takes wave 3 if you're really that desperate. I think there's something there, but again, don't quote me on it. Don't run in there and be like, ETL setup, like, this is just conjecture on my part. I'm just thinking aloud. But after the 90++, you also have these fundraising quests, which these are mainly just for getting the event CEs, the event command codes, the lores, all that good stuff. These are just like bonus additional quests that pretty much a lot of events have nowadays that aren't really hard. They're like baby's first challenge quest type things. They might maybe be on the level of like part 1 bosses, part 1.5 bosses, because some of them have break bars, but realistically, they are not all that hard. You'll unlock these by clearing through story and doing multiple jobs on Mount Liang, and it does eventually get to the point where you can see like, oh my goodness, I gotta do 300 jobs to unlock this. Eventually during the story, you can start putting up like 30 servants at a time, so you really will start clearing through those jobs faster than you would think, so don't worry too much about that one. And then finally, I guess let's talk about some of the headlining servants. So as far as the main 5-star is concerned, you're going to be looking at trying to get Huyan over here, who again, I am looking forward to a lot. The only unfortunate thing is that if you're looking for a super high tier meta servant, I mean, Huyan is good, she's not bad, but the really weird thing that they decided to do was they put out Huyan now, and then the next event is going to be Britomart, and Britomart has pretty much the exact same kit as Huyan, but just a little bit better. And what I mean by stuff like that is like, instead of having double dodge, Britomart has like double invincibility. Or the fact that Huyan is an assassin, so you would want to use her against riders, right? Well, Britomart not only has her own power mod, but also just has power mod against rider enemies as well. It's really, really strange. It's like they put out Huyan and then they put Britomart like right next to her. They're kind of stepping on each other's toes. Thankfully, Huyan, has the evil alignment thing. She can stun enemies, I suppose, so she's got kind of that going for her, but realistically, if you see me summoning for Huion, you're like, oh, she must be really good. No. This is me specifically going for a servant that I've been looking forward to for the longest time because, dude, they made a super serious sword lady turn into absolute putty whenever you say, hey, you got nice hair, you know, or you're looking good today. And then she just melts. And then that's where you get all the really cute Huion art. I like my cute characters, so that's the only reason I'm summoning. I do think Huion's kit is good enough for her to stand out by herself, and it's not exactly like, oh, Britomart is a one-to-one copy, but they are very, very similar, and they fulfill very similar roles. So if you were looking for a quick AoE looper, for one, probably should have just gone for Senno Rikyu. But if you're looking between the two of them, honestly, they're like so similar that you can just go for who you prefer, and I prefer Huion. Now, as far as the free-to-play servant is concerned, for a lot of players, this is going to be pretty major because this is a free-to-play pretender, and so this gives you a little bit of extra diversity in your account. And truthfully, she's not all that bad. I mean, she's not the craziest support out there. I say support because she does a little bit of supporting, does a little bit of offense, but as a free-to-play servant, she's all right. I mean, she does kind of the Hans thing where she is gonna buff people based on, you know, their alignments and whatnot. She makes everybody a Mount Liang servant and then can kind of give them a little bit of battery. So yeah, she can't do buster looping or anything, but they sacrificed that for maybe making her a little bit of a pseudo support. And I mean, she certainly could have been worse. Again, also remember she's going to be a free NP5, so her damage is going to be decent at the very least. But if you're expecting this to be like the next BB or something along those lines, like one of these really cracked free-to-plays, you might want to set those expectations just down a little bit. Treat it as though we're kind of getting our extra class Liz finally, and hope that over on the JP side of things, that her coming out over here on NA coincides with us finally getting the Halloween costume for Liz that we got like 3-4 years ago and they just never did as a thing. I'm not a huge Liz fan, but I do want that costume because even I can admit it looks real good. So with all that being said, that is pretty much everything in regards to our Halloween 2024 event that we're going to be getting. If you enjoyed, again, I would appreciate getting a like or a subscription to the channel on this video, as again, it does help me out more than you know. But if you want to go that extra mile, we do have a Patreon link down in the description down below if that is something that tickles your pickle. I will also probably be doing my summons for Huion on Monday. I would like to say I'm going to be out of town this weekend, which is why there may not be double uploads this weekend. I'm going to try my best, but I'm only going to have the laptop on me, so I don't know if that's going to exactly work out for doing double uploads. I wanted to try to do it for the entire month of October, but there might be some days where you only get the normal daily upload, which is the norm, by the way, but I'm trying to challenge myself to do double uploads, so we'll see if I can't find some of the things to kind of get there in between being out of town and, you know, having a real life. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice one, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Late, guys.